Is the chicken crossing the road, or is the road moving beneath the chicken? So, you know, is my resistance to, you know, what this young person wants to express or do, is that really just my response? So being aware, I think, is an important place to be. I have a good story. My first time in juvenile hall with my body awareness project. There's a game that we play in with teens in schools or at the Sangha at East Bay Meditation Center. It's called If You Really Knew Me. And I don't know, many people have probably played that game. It's pretty simple to play. You start with a prompt, and if you really knew me, you would know. I have 3 sisters. If you really knew me, you would know I was born and raised in the Bay. I'm a musician. I'm a drummer. So we were going to play that game, and we had a couple of teens who were particularly, you know, rambunctious, I guess we would say. And so we were trying to get through If You Really Knew Me, and so the one teen says, if you really knew me, you would know. If you cross me, I will cut you. We sharpen chicken bones up in here. And for me, it was like, and then, you know, laughter, and then she's just gonna banter. And so for me, it was like, ooh, you get down like that? Like, that's how you, oh yeah. And then so she started laughing. And so just meeting her where she was and asking her about that, you know, that's how you get down. And she started telling stories about, well, you know, there's her man and my man on the outside and this and that. And I said, well, that sounds like a lot of work. It doesn't sound like that's very peaceful. And we actually really got into a conversation about where she was, you know, what was happening for her. So using some of this energy as an opportunity for dialogue is another, I think is another really good key point. And I have been working with a few different demographics. And so it's really interesting, the differences. I mean, at the East Bay Meditation Center or with IBME, we're dealing with teens who have some crossover. They're dealing with teen issues. They're dealing with, you know, they're experimenting with drugs. They have issues around their sexuality, their gender identity. They may have some contact with the foster care system. But for the most part, these are teen issues that they're dealing with. They're having issues with their parents. They're having issues with their families. They're thinking about college, for the most part. They're thinking about, you know, getting a part-time job. They're thinking about having a driver's license, having a car. These teens in juvenile hall, they have been in and out of the foster care system for, you know, some of them most of their lives, in and out of the hall 15, 20 times. They have physical trauma. Just closing their eyes brings up trauma. So in dealing with this kind of resistance, where it's really, really body-based, fear-based, and just no exposure whatsoever to ideas around mindfulness. What is mindfulness? How is this going to benefit me? And the thing also, you know, when we talk about, well, what is mindfulness, and we talk about the present moment, this particular present moment and experiencing what's happening now inside of juvenile hall and the issues that they're dealing with, court, they're dealing with the children that have lost their children. Their children are away from them. They're they're really worried about their placement. So dealing with that now, that present moment, it's tricky. And so it's really important for me to be mindful of where I am when I'm relating to one of these young people. and building the relationship and the trust and really the disarming them, because when I'm coming in there, they're translating me to who knows what. And so until we have that connection, that personal connection, they don't know what to expect from me. And so I'm going to say trust, dialogue, relationship building, meeting them where they are, and even in letting the resistance expand, letting it walk around a little bit. And then nailing down, a way to point out the resistance, to call it out, and not really as resistance, but as a phenomenon. What's going on right now? What's happening? So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Maha?
Hi. Whereas, from my experience, where you have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 resistance, for me, usually it's starting with stage 3, because you can look at me and you'll be like, you're the other, you're different, right? There is no hiding me because of my scarf and the way I'm dressed. And so I expect that resistance when I go into the classroom the first time. I usually encounter 2 types of students. The first type will be like, we don't know what you're doing intellectually, so we don't understand what's going on. And the other type is, you are the other, so what are you trying to teach us? You must be trying to teach us something that goes beyond our beliefs or against our beliefs, and so we are going to resist what you have to say. And so because I am aware of what to expect in the classroom setting, I always come in prepared to tie mindfulness into their own lives and into the curriculum where we're studying. And so in public speaking, because I know we all are scared of speaking up in public, I tie mindfulness into how they can calm their nerves in order to present the speech. And then I tie it in other ways, such as how to be an ethical listener and how to be an ethical speaker, and so on and so on. So I come up about mindfulness in academic ways. When it comes to interpersonal communication, I know that we can't be better communicators unless we know who we are. And so we work on the me before trying to interact with other peoples. And so I use a lot of mindfulness when we're discussing topics, for example, such as self-concept and self. Whereas self-concept, we get our self-concept from other people and the environment around us and the community and so on and so forth, and how is that affecting self. And so as we're discussing different topics in interpersonal communication, I stop and ask him to do a quick mindfulness and then reflect on what we've been discussing. By that, first of all, they realize that I'm not trying to teach them any strange dogma, and by focusing on them and their growth, then they're more acceptable of what I'm doing. Because we all, at the bottom of it, we all want to be accepted for who we are, and we all want to be understood for who we are. And that's how I go about dealing with the resistance that I find in the classroom.
Thank you, Maha. So I'd like to thank you all of you for your comments. I'd like to just do a little time check. We're running a few minutes behind. Is everybody okay if we take another 15 minutes before breaking for lunch so that we have a little time for the panel? Is that okay? If you have to run out or something, please feel free to do. But we'd like to now just invite your comments or your questions for anyone here on the panel. And I think we have a microphone, someone manning the microphone to go around. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the wireless mic. So I will pass. Since my part in this will be fairly small, I'm going to, can we pass this down to Mahan?
We'll try.
Okay.
Why don't you hold it for now?
Okay, I'll hold it for a second.
Trade you. Excuse me. So sorry.
Myself, I'm working with patients. I haven't bought 2 new microphones for this program. That might work.
Might be transmitted.
This needs to go around.
I think you can speak loudly enough. Yeah.
There's recording. Thank you. So sorry. Here we go.
So questions, comments? So, maybe right here.
I have a question for Syra. So I'm curious, given in juvenile hall that it's difficult to, because of the trauma and all those intense feelings, to begin with mindfulness with closing eyes, and just curious what kinds of strategies you have found that are useful in kind of building into that.
So, first there's the idea of building a space that they want to come to. So creating a container that they enjoy being in, and that's really about relating to each other and creating. When Roger mentioned the agreements, where they can just drop everything for a minute and be there. So there's that intention, and we do spend a lot of time on that intention. And then in terms of actually practicing mindfulness, we invite them to leave their eyes open. If it feels more comfortable, you're welcome to leave your eyes open. We use sound. We also use games to begin to touch into the body, different types of games and activities, so that it's a practice. So if it's something that they're beginning to feel comfortable with and they keep coming back, the meditations for them can become deeper. And then there's also, one of our principles is the attitude of acceptance, and so learning to accept, what's happening right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does someone else have a question? Oh, okay. Well, I just was wondering if any of you could speak to mindfulness, how you utilize mindfulness in like classroom management, or if you do, because I, in an ideal situation, it's like very neat and tidy and like, oh yeah. But that doesn't happen very often. So I'm just wondering, mindfulness and classroom management.
Well, I'll start. Can you all hear? Do you need this recorded, Sean? Well, it's rarely neat and tidy in my classroom. It's very diverse. There's no majority, and diverse in all areas. And what's interesting is that I get them used to. Now they're college students, so there's a certain level of maturity that happens even at the 20-year-old range. And so I just wait until they settle. They sit in a circle, because we say that there's collective intelligence. We're all in the environment. We're in it in different ways, and their inness matters. So they need to see each other and see what they contribute. And so that they can't hide behind each other helps with management. And then the mindfulness, I actually have them practice with their eyes open, because it's a communications class. And so practicing being mindful to listening to yourself so that you can listen to other while they're going on. But then and so we do an opening at the beginning of the class, and then I lead into whatever visualization for that class. And then after that, if things get tense, and two of my former students are here, Shay and Maha, they can describe for themselves. I just let it happen until it gets too edgy, and then just send them back into mindfulness and ask them to inquire, to notice first what's going on in their body, and then to inquire, what do they want to ask of this situation, what of themselves, and then they write their questions, and then we go around the circle and each person puts their question in the center. So able to really read the different experiences without comment. So that's just one of the way, but it's always going back. It's very mindful based, and I had a situation just last spring where a student went out sobbing after making a very vulnerable self-disclosure. And so I just had the students really sit with what was going on. And first I had them stand in solidarity, and then had them sit when the student left, and had them do mindfulness, and then actually moved into a little bit of Tonlin of let's touch this person's pain, and let's send out with our breath whatever would be of benefit to him, without naming what would be of benefit. So it's those situations that I just return. We're always coming back in that way.
Hi. I work with adolescents at a chemical dependency treatment center, and so they are often there because their parents or schools have sent them there, so they don't want to be there. So we often face a lot of resistance in the groups that we run. And the thing that I always find myself being torn between is how much, say the other day, one of the teens just refused to do the check-in. The rest of the group was just really sulking and being resistant, but in a non-participatory way. So not really being aggressive or really causing a big problem, but just not wanting to participate. And just in those situations, I often find myself torn between really being understanding and just saying it's okay, you don't have to participate. And then because I'm often in there with other facilitators, some of them will be maybe more confrontational and just be like, well, if you're not going to participate, then you can leave. And just finding, because sometimes what I hear about working with youth is it's good, to make sure that they respect the space, respect you as a facilitator, have clear boundaries, clear rules. But do you see what I'm saying? I'm kind of torn between sometimes how to be very compassionate around it, or just being like, this behavior isn't okay, and how to put that out there. So I'm wondering how you handle situations like that with youth. How much to be like, you just have to respect this, and otherwise you have to leave, or something like that. There's a consequence. Or kind of respecting where they're at and letting them either not participate or something like that. That's for anyone, sorry.
Amy, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks, Leslie. I often find in those situations that really naming or making the space and making where they are completely normal is really helpful. So I'll just tell a short story. So I was teaching in a remedial English classroom, so it's often underserved kids with learning differences, low socioeconomic status. And I had a couple girls who were like chatting and doing their nails and, being kind of that tough, cool, not so participatory. And I was leading a thought watching practice, and we happened to be set up in rows, so I was walking up and down the rows and kind of just paused by their desk and said, notice what your thoughts are right now. Like, it was Friday afternoon, so are you thinking about the weekend and what are you going to do? Are you thinking about your homework? Are you thinking, why the F is she standing by my desk? And, they got quiet, and I led the rest of the practice. And then afterwards, the girl who really could have cared less and really didn't want to be there, she raised her hand. She said, "Are you a mind reader?" And I said, "No, I'm not. And I have a mind. And my mind is a lot like your mind. And I can make a guess at what was happening for you. And like, if you make the space for them to be exactly where they are, or even to go, I try to go 2 or 3 steps beyond where they are, and to let them know that that's normal and that's okay." Then I had a girl who was completely unengaged go to being like, well, wow, how'd she know that? And so there's this place of like not letting it go and not pushing it. There's this middle place where you can really meet them exactly where they are, and they they get in the way that you say it, like that it's okay. It's totally okay that you're thinking, why the F is she standing by my desk? I get it. I can meet you there. And then it's a whole nother conversation.
Great. So maybe just one or two more questions that might have come up for you while you were working with the diversity and resistance exercise that you really, really wanted to talk with one of the panelists about. Somebody? Yeah.
This is for any of the people of color on the panel. When I was looking through the different levels of resistance and having a chat in my dyad, we were talking that lots of these seem to be interconnected. And I could think of examples from my life where I might have an interaction with someone, they perceive me a certain way because I'm a person of color, and maybe then information that I give them won't be seen in a certain light, or there can be many examples like that. And so I think a lot of the time I'm at a level 3 stage of thinking, okay, this is how I'm being perceived. But how can that be named if I'm not entirely sure and that person probably doesn't even realize they're doing it? I never know how to actually get past that, because my feeling that I'm being perceived a certain way and treated as that can limit me from being able to, I don't know, being in a good place. And then I don't feel like I can name it a lot of the time because maybe they don't even realize they're doing it, or maybe they don't even realize that's there. So that's something I struggle with and wonder if you have any insight into that.
One thing that I always put in my mind is that if you see somebody doing something crazy and you don't know them, then you will come up with ideas about, oh God, this is weird, they're doing something crazy. But if you see somebody and you know that they are mentally crazy and they do something crazy, then they have an excuse, right? You can understand why they're acting that way. And so I look at it this way. If I go in, I'm thinking, this is how they're going to look at me and this is how they're thinking, then I already put a filter in front of me and I can't see them. And so I go in with an open mind. I don't bring it up, yes, I know this is how you look at me. I don't think about it as, now they're acting this way because this is how you think of me. It takes time to build a relationship. And so I can see a little bit of the resistance is obvious, but I don't say anything about it. I don't mention it. I go on my way and do what I need to do. And by the 3rd or 4th classroom that we meet, they start to build that trust. Once the trust is starting to build, then they will look at me as me and not me as wearing the hijab. And then we can have a conversation. And so it's good to be aware that this is how they're thinking of you, because now you know where they're coming from. Are they being explicitly biased or implicitly biased? Whereas explicitly they're obvious, implicitly most of the time they don't even know that they're being biased. And so the good news is that you're aware of it. And now you can understand why they're acting the way they're acting. And so you can excuse them. But eventually, their own implicit bias are going to be changed just by interacting with you and building trust and relationship.
I'm having a hard time like formulating my question because I'm having a real like visceral, what is it, second resistance right now to something. So I'm just gonna talk about it. Let's see, 1 out of the 5 of you work with what you would call underprivileged or underserved communities, and so I want to ask, or how, like the focus of that is how youth with privilege can benefit from mindfulness, and addressing also that, and how higher institutions can utilize, yeah, what we're doing here.
Is it on or no? For me, I work in like settings across the board, from very distressed, traumatized, underprivileged settings to very affluent settings. And I think for me, and there's actually research from Columbia. A woman named Sonia Luther looked at people, and she was looking at affluent kids initially as a control group. And what she found is that affluent kids are as stressed, depressed, anxious, substance using, etc., as the underprivileged kids. And when I teach, I think that there's not a middle where they're not stressed, depressed, and anxious. So I think there is both need to really, someone already said, like, really put yourself in that setting and understand what the specific stressors are in a given setting. But at the same time, at the end, we're all human beings, and we're all subject to suffering and stress and depression and anxiety. And so we all need that. And certainly in affluent settings and university settings, mindfulness is becoming much more used, and partly it's becoming used because the kids are coming into higher education having, meeting all these standards all the time and performing and Common Core and trying to get in, and they get there and they're toast, they're burnt out, and the mental health facilities in the colleges are realizing that these kids need skills. But I think the diversity piece is hugely important. But I also think underneath recognizing the common humanity and that we're all struggling and suffering in our own context is equally important.
And we may not have done as well in our introductions as we might, but I think almost everybody here works across the board in different situations. One last question here.
Hi, I teach in a very diverse school of 4,000 students in Union City, and I've been trying to get a meditation program in that district for 3 years. Still working on it. But one of my questions is, we talked about resistance a lot with students, but given the last question, I'm receiving a lot of resistance from parents. Parents, I love Carol Dweck, Stanford professor with growth mindset, and I've been working with that instruction at the beginning of every year with all my students, no matter if they're honors or whatever level they are. And I find the students are receptive initially, but when I try to reach out to parents with the same ideas, they are so fearful of their students not doing well and getting into college. There's a lot of fear. And so then the students shut down. And so it becomes grade grubbing and not learning. And so there's a lot of resistance to actually just allowing ourselves to make so-called mistakes and learn from them and feel proud of that and grow. And that has to do with mindfulness and self-awareness. And so I just wanted to know if any of you could speak to how you may handle resistance from parents and how I could better reach out to them and make clear my goals and see each other as like a team collaboratively. I've tried to do it with back to school night, reaching out to parents and, with my syllabus and just saying, hey, this is my philosophy, and using the research to back it up. It's not just me. It's, thoughtful other folks in the education community, but I didn't know if anyone wanted to speak to that resistance from parents or community.
Thank you. So I work with a lot of families, and I work with kids that have learning challenges. And many of the families that come in, and some of them are already, you know, they're very academically knowledgeable about, you know, they're doctors and lawyers, some of them, and some of them, they really have this idea that they want their kids to be on the track to going to some of the Ivy League schools. And then we get others that know that their children really have serious learning challenges. But every parent that I get in front of me, at this point, I've been speaking their language. And I look at the people in front of me, and I have been presenting a lot of evidence of what it is that the work that we're doing and the purpose and the intention behind it. And with mindfulness, I looked into every single resource that I could find and started just pounding it out. And for some of our parents, they need to be able to see that evidence that there is actually value in what it is. And whenever you're presenting something that's new, that's coming in from a different angle than what our society likes to see, in terms of the schools, you know, they're very evidence-based. But when you're going into a more progressive way, or looking at what I call the core, or, you know, the processing piece that underlies the foundation for learning, if you can talk in their language about when you see your child doing this, it is the symptom that you're seeing is that they're not doing their homework, for example. But the core issue is here, and this is where we need to start. We can treat the symptom by continuing to do more, you know, work for you, and they can sit in their room and pound out their multiplication or whatever you want them to do. Just like we treat the symptom of, you know, somebody getting colds a lot, we just give them drugs, you know, to get better. Or we can go to the core issue and really address it from there, and then have a lot of evidence based on that. That's what I've been doing, and it's worked tremendously well. In fact, I'm getting more and more people that want to do mindfulness with their children now as a result of that. Oh, no, I don't. Well, I work with high school kids. We work with middle school. We work with all ages. And but this is at, you know, our learning center. I also work in the public schools as well. But yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, and also, you know, we'll have time hopefully after to continue the conversation, but there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is just around co-construction, and in my work now with the school district, I really try to engage parents before I put anything like official out. So I've lifted up parent voice, just as we do it with student voice, the importance of lifting up student voice. So I'd happy to be a thought partner with you on how, you know, within reason, because it can be overwhelming, but to engage parents in the process. And so I think this idea of co-construction can be really important. And then also just really naming and acknowledging, you know, their fears and where they're coming from. Like, I know you want your child to succeed. I want your child to succeed. Let's be partners in your child's success together. And that's usually how I would, in fact, almost all my emails to parents would always be in partnership. And that's how I would go into even parent conferences. It's like, okay, we're a team, we're partners. And at the same time, you have to maintain your boundaries too. But happy to talk with you outside a little more about that.
Thank you. And we will have some more time to talk this afternoon, but just to close for today, Roger's going to do just a minute of mindfulness, and then we'll have a couple of announcements and go for lunch.
So just taking a posture that allows for you to be fully anchored and relaxed and connected to the earth and the floor and the cushion, and where your body can gently come to rest. And taking a few moments to connect with something that feels like an anchor for you, whether it's the breath or sensations settling in the body and just the play of feelings in the fingers and the hands, along the back, in the head. And noting that there are emotions, there are thoughts, and they will arise, and they will go. And being both open to change as those thoughts arise, and they come and go, and holding them gently when they come. And now, gently and slowly coming back into the room, into the space, into this community, and arriving as it feels comfortable for you, opening your eyes, adjusting as necessary, feeling into this space and in this community, that you'll have an opportunity to explore, appreciate, and connect with a little bit more over lunch. And hopefully having some good and effective dialogues about some of the contents from this morning's discussion, and an opportunity to look forward to this afternoon's discussions and groups and more to come. And holding all that with hopefully some gratitude and appreciation and beginner's mind about what there is to learn and what we have learned and shared together.